Of course it's misery-inducing. It's anti-life. We're living in, I believe, an anti-life ideology at the moment.
So what can you do as an individual in that situation?
Despair. Really despair.
He's been reading a lot of Dostoevsky, mate. That Russian literature will get to you. Too much Russian literature will rot your brain. Yeah. It will tell you the very sad truth about life. And you will never be happy again.
Drink vodka, listen to sad Russian folk music and be done. It was Kierkegaard with despair, which was, and I only learned this recently, it's healthy to despair because we stay stuck in an ideological loop if we refuse to despair. So if you say, no, it's okay, we're winning the game, Instagram is cool and, I don't know, TikTok is great, let's learn a TikTok dance and post it and get 1 million views, you're still stuck in the ideological loop. And Kierkegaard was right, you should despair. If it sucks, you should say it sucks. But that's kind of a social taboo for us. Like if something is really awful and you want to say, this is really awful, it's a really fast way to become a pariah. It's a really fast way to get, even like criticism. You guys lived it. You were like, excuse me, can we just politely say that some of this doesn't make much sense? Big pushback for that, big punishment for that. It's not, certainly in the beginning, it's not a rewarding experience until you find the others and realize there's support there. It's a lonely place to be in, but despair is key. If we don't despair, we can't grieve. Despair is essential to having an honest, authentic interaction with reality. Some parts of life suck. We know this. The Vedic scriptures were teaching us this 6,000 years ago. All of life is suffering. The Gnostics, the same thing. This world is not perfect. It's not supposed to be. So the horror, I think, that we live in now is, Zizek has pointed it out, it's called the fetishist split. So we know that it sucks, and yet we have to pretend that it does not. And we have to stick a smiling face on it. That's torture. You should be able to say, no, this isn't very good. I don't like this. This is not what I signed up for, and I'd like it to stop. But we've sort of been coerced into a position where we feel like we can do everything else, but not that. So despair.
I know what you mean about that. Sorry, just this quick comment is because I guess it's that thing of like the first step to solving the problem is admitting you have one. And if you admit you have a problem, it's quite right to be at least whatever by that, right?
Discontented.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
No, and I was going to talk to you about not only do we feel despair, not only are we forced to put on this fake smile and project this happy life, but because of social media, Instagram, that's what everybody does. So to use a terminology of the time, we're all being gaslit.
Yeah.
Into thinking that everybody's having this great life apart from us.
And that, Zizek would say, that is ideology at its purest. So we're being force-fed the ideology and then we force-feed it back to each other because we're not just being told what to desire, our ability to desire is being coerced. So it's not just what to desire, it's the way in which you desire it needs to be ideologically pure as well. So yeah, we're all playing the same stupid game for who? And it's this double bind. It's been fed back into it, so it's plugged back into itself. We're all doing it for somebody else, but we all know perfectly well it isn't true. It's nightmarish, and the way out is, yeah, you want to say somebody's got to go, hang on. This sucks. This is wrong. Let's just, I need to despair. And really despair. Despair is grief. You go, wow, what have we lost? Fucking hell, we lost God. We lost community. We lost each other. Look at our children. Look at the state the world is in. This is horrifying. Oh, cry, weep, roll on the floor, piss yourself if you like. I won't judge you. But then the morning after, you say, okay, now what? Now I've accepted it's wrong. Now what? That's where we need to get to. And so I'm an accelerationist in that regard.
But we're also incentivized not to do that. We're incentivized to carry on. Because the more you carry on, the more followers you have. The more followers you have, the more successful you are. And the more successful you are in this world, the more income you can generate, blah, 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 blah.
And is this not capitalism? So there's the capitalism of acquiring likes. It's more, I keep these bananas. What are they? They're fucking little digital thumbs. But our brains are so easily tricked. We think that that's a real thing. And so it's the acquisition of more keeps you in the game. To actually step out of the game is a huge social taboo. And it doesn't even need to be punished or criminalized. Our brains will reject it because you'll be like, well, everybody else is doing this. Every other monkey in my troop is doing it. Why am I going to leave the tribe? That's extremely dangerous. Your I believe, it's not proven. I personally believe your genetics will fight you if you try and leave the tribe because it's death. Evolutionarily, it's always been death.
Yeah, it's difficult.
So if you rebel, and like you were given your story the other day, and these emotional highs and lows, and you've got to go off in a room and cry, I think that's your DNA saying, stop. It's safe over there. Don't fucking do this. It's a hell of a fight. It's a hell of a fight.
It is, but I also think there's also a heroic thing in human beings. And it is narcissism. It's narcissistic to think you're the person who's going to go and change the world. But I do think there's a heroic instinct in us as well, which says, I know what's going on here.
Yeah.
And just because all these other fucking monkeys want to go along with it, well, I'm not one of you.
Yeah.
I see what's happening, and I'm going to step out, and I'm going to say so, and I'll take the punishment.
Yes.
I'll take the punishment because I know what the truth is here. And the truth is, this isn't working.
Yeah.
You can't have people running around #BeKind while they mob people into suicide.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think there's also that side of it as well, which is people, it's a small minority of people in society, but they're the ones that have always made history. You know what I mean?
100%. I think the way you worded the question before was like, where have we gone wrong and what we could do about it? And we said, you got to bring back God, or at least some kind of reverence. You have to despair, which means you have to be able to tell the truth about what's going on. And then maybe you could have a third thing there, which is courage. And courage means not the big flex of saying it and getting the applause for it, but the willingness to get hurt, the willingness to get fucked up. That's courage. If you know you're not going to get hurt, that's not courage. If you know you're going to lose your job, if you know you're going to be kicked out of the comedy community that you're in, I don't know, like for people who've not done this, they don't know how that feels. Maybe they don't know how that feels. It's an awful feeling. I have friends of yours, people you've known for years, people you work with, shun you because you're telling the truth as you see it. That's despair. So you've already been through that one.
We have. You know, there's a great scene. Have you seen Hunger? It's a film about Bobby Sands.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Do you remember there's this beautiful scene in the middle of the movie where the priest comes into the prison and they're sitting and Bobby Sands tell the story of how when he was a kid they went on this field trip and there was this deer that fallen in the river and it was drowning and he went over and he knew what to do, which is to finish it off as it happened, right? And he says, I knew what I had to do and I was willing to take the punishment.
Right.
And I remember that scene always because when we started TRIGGERnometry, I just felt that the catastrophe of where we're going as a culture is worth risking the little that we had at the time to actually stand up against it and say something. And the reassuring thing for me is, you know, there's people out there who are interested in hearing that. There's people out there who want to hear those conversations and do something about it, you know?
100%. That scene that you're talking about, isn't that like a one-shot scene that goes on for like 15 minutes?
Yeah,
it's
incredible.
Really good. It's amazing. So you said the catastrophe. I know that you're interviewing me. Can I just ask you guys though, how bad do you think the catastrophe could be? How bad do you think a prospective catastrophe could be in the scenario we're in?
Well, actually, I've got a book. No, but I have written a book which is coming out middle of next year, which is called An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West.
Right.
And my thesis is that the process we are experiencing is essentially the destruction of Western Enlightenment values. And, you know, the existential stuff that we talked about earlier, that's separate and probably even more important. But I just know the way the world actually works, right? And people in the West can have this airy-fairy nonsense about how equality and diversity. That's not how the rest of the world works. The rest of the world works on a very simple basis. If I'm stronger than you, then I'm going to take over you, right? That's how it works. So the moment the West undermines itself, there are plenty of people waiting to fill that void, that power void. And China, maybe Russia, they'll come in. And if you think racism is bad now, what do you think is going to happen?
They'll show you what it means.
Yeah.
They'll teach us what it means.
That's my view. What about you, Francis?
From my background as being a teacher, the thing that I despair about the most is what we're doing to our children, what we're doing to our kids. You see with transgender ideology, the fact that we give puberty blockers to 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and somehow we think that this is progressive and kind is an abomination. It's child abuse. And the reason that we're not allowed to have sex with children is because children can't consent. It's that simple. And they can't consent to take puberty blockers because they have no concept of consequences. That is a psychological fact. The fact that we hand them social media, smartphones from the age of 10 and 11 is abuse as well, because you are just essentially molding their brains in the most unhealthy way possible. You're showing them the most unhealthy images possible. What Instagram does to young girls and to young women, I think it's the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see an absolute slew of girls who have with a variety of body dysmorphia, anorexia, etc., etc. The fact that Instagram are trying to create an Instagram for kids, have you heard about this?
No, I haven't. No.
They're trying to create a specific Instagram for kids. It's just vile, and we're going to reap the rewards. And I find it sad because it's not their fault, and we're going to have a generation that is stunted as a result.
100%. Yeah.
What do you think?
Gulags and genocide. We're on the road to it, and people laugh. They say, "No, not here." I'm like, "What do you think? We're special? You think historically we're fucking unique?" I know you've had Douglas Murray on a few times, but I remember he always said when people are saying, "Oh, this is a racist country," it's like, well, try going to another one. We can show you. I lived in Malaysia. If you want to, I mean, it's not a terrible place, but if you want to see institutionalized racism, if you're not a Muslim Malay, you're in a different tax band, and there are different universities. Oh, absolutely. Different universities you go to, different employment laws apply to you, and you cannot convert to be, it's called Bhumi Putra. You can't convert to it. It's ethnic. It's in your blood. And you are in a different tax band. So it doesn't matter how many Chinese and Indians are working to help boost their economy, which they are the majority earners there. It doesn't matter. They're in a separate... That's racist. Like what we're talking about in this country is, I mean, specifically, that's institutional racism. Right. That is, it's enshrined in law. If it's not enshrined in law, it's going to be difficult for us to prove that. So to the Douglas Murray point, is like, he always says, compared to where? Or compared to who? How are you grading us? How are you grading our civilization? But I think on the path we're on is gulags and genocide.
Why do you say that? People will... Look, we didn't laugh because it's not funny anymore. Austria segregating vaccinated people from unvaccinated people.
Something we would never have believed would have happened 2 years ago.
I mean,
to be fair, though, those boys do have a history for it.
They do a little.
Yeah.
It's Austria and Bavaria.
Get in the camp. We don't want your freedom. But it's not funny anymore, really, because this is why the shadow point that you made right at the beginning is so important. It's only people who truly understand their own capacity for evil and their own capacity for social conformity and their own capacity, most importantly, for being in love with their own virtuousness. Because that's what the Nazis thought. That's what the communists and the Soviets thought. They thought they were fixing society. And of course it's worth putting a few you know, non-believers in a camp. Of course it is, because we're creating the future brilliant society in which man will be perfected. And it's only when you know all this, and you know, Jordan Peterson obviously has talked about this a lot. It's only when you know that you are capable of putting people in a camp that you might not. You know, but why do you say that is your fear? Why do you say that's where potentially going?
I'm geographically and historically literate, and I'm not a moron. I do, when I'm looking around and I look at like I know that you're moving away from talking about the woke movement a little bit, which I understand. I was woke. I was a radical leftist when I was a student. I had the purple hair and the eyebrow piercing and all that. I studied feminism as well as the psychology. And I understand that. I understand where these people are coming from. But as it goes through its different iterations, it's like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. And I was about, well, let's not bully people. Let's keep people included. Let's be inclusive. So my thing was like, let's be reasonable and not excessively tyrannical, and let's not have a policy of the devil take the hindmost, because I've been the hindmost and I didn't like the devil taking me. Let's try and support people. Fine. Then it goes through these different iterations, like a virus that's mutating over time, to something that is utterly moronic. I mean, moronic. You would have to be a fucking idiot to believe that this was useful. And we're talking psychological illiteracy, emotional illiteracy, geographical illiteracy, and historical literacy. The Soviets and the Nazis, we're not talking about 400 years ago. There's people still alive.
My grandmother, she lived on, half her family were purged in the Soviet thing, and then the other half of family were taken as slaves to Germany during the war. She's alive. You can go talk to her. Perfectly compos mentis. And
you've got relatives from Venezuela.
Yeah.
So we can't just go, oh yeah, 400 years ago, the Spanish Inquisition. No. I'm sorry, we're the same people. We just have smartphones now. We're not better. And you could say, well, we've learned our lessons.
No,
have we?
No, we fucking haven't.
I'd love to see the evidence that we've learned our lessons, because we seem to be doing some eerily similar things again. Aren't we going back now to neo-segregation? We only just gave it up 40 years ago, and we're doing it again. Why? Because it worked so well the last fucking few times we did it. So that's why I just look at what I try to see is, how does it begin? Obviously, everything escalates. Once you sort of open the floodgates a little bit, then another one, then another one, then another one. Yeah, gulags and genocide. We are gulagging people. We've digitally gulagged people. How far away is that from actually gulagging them? So now, physical gulagging, as you just said, it's going to take place in Austria and the Czech Republic, which I was living in up until 6 months ago. That's doing it from Monday as well. They're following in Austria's footsteps, as they usually do.
Really?
Yes, from Monday.
The Sudetenland will be with us.
I'm telling you.
Are the Germans doing it as well?
Yeah, they're talking about it.
Yeah. Are they really?
Yeah.